Arrest him. He's stealing our fish. That's what HOA President Linda Morrison screamed into her phone when she called the cops on me. One small problem: I was fishing in my own lake on my own 500-acre ranch that I'd owned for 3 years. Before you watch full story, comment down from which country are you watching, also subscribe the channel. Linda thought calling 911 would get rid of me. She didn't know that single phone call would end up costing her HOA $3.2 million and expose the biggest fraud scheme our county had ever seen. How does calling the cops on a fisherman lead to a multi-million-dollar disaster? What was Linda so desperate to hide? Drop your city in the comments. Let's see who else is dealing with insane HOAs. It was 5:30 a.m. on a perfect Saturday morning when my peaceful world exploded into chaos. The mist was rising off my private lake like something from a postcard, and I just made my first cast of the day. After 25 years as a software engineer in Silicon Valley, this ranch in Texas Hill Country had become my sanctuary. No deadlines, no traffic, no stress, just me, the water, and whatever decided to bite. I'd bought the Lone Star Ranch 3 years ago with my early retirement money. 500 acres of pristine Texas landscape with a 20-acre spring-fed lake right in the center. The previous owner, old Jake Martinez, had been fishing this lake for 40 years before health issues forced him to sell. "Take care of her, son," he told me during the closing. "This lake's got more stories than you can imagine." The peace shattered at exactly 6 a.m. when I heard the angry whine of an ATV engine cutting through the morning calm. 2 figures were approaching like some kind of suburban assault team. The woman in front wore a business suit at dawn. Who does that? Behind her, a younger man with a clipboard jogged to keep up. I kept casting, hoping they'd realize their mistake and drive away. But the ATV skidded to a stop 30 feet from my fishing spot, sending gravel flying into the water. "Stop right there," the woman shouted, jumping off before the vehicle fully stopped. "You're in violation of Sunset Hills HOA Regulation 23C regarding unauthorized use of community water features." I slowly reeled in my line and turned around, keeping my voice calm despite my growing irritation. "I'm sorry, who are you?" The woman's face went red like I just asked her to explain quantum physics. "I'm Linda Morrison, president of Sunset Hills Homeowners Association, and you, sir, are trespassing on HOA property." She pulled out her phone with dramatic flair while her assistant Tommy, according to his name tag, started recording everything on a tablet. "Ma'am, this is my private property," I said, gesturing to the lake and surrounding ranch land. "I bought this place 3 years ago. The lake is part of my deed." Linda actually laughed, a harsh sound that sent a family of ducks fleeing across the water. "There's no such thing as private water in Sunset Hills. Every body of water in this development falls under HOA jurisdiction according to our master deed." That's when things went from annoying to absolutely insane. Linda dialed 911 while maintaining eye contact with me like we were in some kind of standoff. Tommy shifted uncomfortably behind her, and I caught him whispering, "Mrs. Morrison, are you sure about this?" She snapped at him without looking away from me. "Record everything, Tommy. We'll need evidence of his illegal fishing operation." Illegal fishing operation? I was using a $30 rod from Bass Pro Shops and hadn't even caught anything yet. The 911 call was pure theater. "Yes, this is Linda Morrison, president of Sunset Hills HOA. We have a trespasser on HOA property who's stealing our fish. He's been warned multiple times and now he's threatening violence. Please send officers immediately." I hadn't said a single threatening word, hadn't even raised my voice. But I knew better than to interrupt someone making a false police report. Tommy's face had gone pale, and he kept glancing between Linda and me like he was watching a train wreck in slow motion. Within 20 minutes, 2 police cruisers rolled up with lights flashing because apparently fishing in your own lake is now a code red emergency. Neighbors started gathering, most still in bathrobes, recording everything on their phones for social media. Sheriff Deputy Martinez stepped out of the first cruiser, already looking tired despite it being early morning. He'd probably dealt with Linda before. "Ma'am, what seems to be the problem here?" Linda practically sprinted to him, waving her arms. "Arrest him. He's stealing our fish and contaminating our water supply. This is HOA property and he's trespassing." Deputy Martinez looked at me, then at my fishing rod, then back at Linda with the expression of a man who'd seen this movie before. "Sir, can you explain what's happening here?" I reached into my tackle box and pulled out a waterproof folder I'd learned to keep handy after 3 years of dealing with confused delivery drivers and lost hikers. "Deputy, I'm Marcus Chin. I own the Lone Star Ranch, including this lake. Here's my deed, survey map, and property tax records showing the lake is entirely within my property boundaries, about 2 miles from the nearest HOA jurisdiction. Martinez studied the documents carefully while Linda's face went through several shades of red. "Mrs. Morrison," he said slowly, "this gentleman is correct. This lake is entirely on his private property, well outside your HOA's boundaries." The crowd of neighbors started murmuring, some even laughing. One elderly man in a bathrobe called out, "Linda, you've been telling us for months that you were negotiating with the lake owner about community access." Linda's carefully styled hair was starting to frizz in the morning humidity. "This doesn't matter," she sputtered, her composure cracking. "We have plans for this lake anyway. The development project." She caught herself, but it was too late. Tommy's eyes went wide, and I noticed several neighbors lean in with interest. "I mean, for the community to enhance property values," she backpedaled frantically. Another neighbor, a woman with curlers in her hair, called out, "What development project, Linda? You've been talking about some lakefront thing at meetings but won't give details." "Yeah," added a man walking his dog. "You said it would triple our home values. Is that what this is about?" Linda's face had gone from red to white in seconds. That's confidential HOA business. This meeting is over." As Deputy Martinez handed back my documents and prepared to leave, I watched Linda storm back to her ADV. Her laptop was open on the seat, and from my angle, I could see her frantically clicking something. She was deleting a file, and even from 20 feet away I could make out part of the file name, loandocs_3.2m_confidential. Tommy saw it too. "Mrs. Morrison, what was that file you just deleted?" Linda slammed the laptop shut. "Nothing. It's nothing. Just drive." As they sped away, Deputy Martinez shook his head. "Mr. Chin, you might want to be careful. In 15 years on the force, I've never seen Linda Morrison back down from anything. Whatever she's hiding, it must be big." The crowd dispersed slowly, everyone talking excitedly about Linda's slip-up. I went back to my fishing, but my mind was racing. A loan file worth $3.2 million? A secret development project involving my lake? This wasn't about fishing regulations at all. This was about something much bigger, and Linda Morrison had just made a $3.2 million mistake by calling the cops on me. 2 days after Linda's dramatic 911 call, I woke up to find my mailbox stuffed so full the door wouldn't close properly. 43 violation notices in 48 hours? It had to be some kind of HOA record. Unauthorized fishing rod exceeds 8-foot length limit for recreational equipment. Disturbing aquatic wildlife during designated quiet hours. Unauthorized use of natural resources without proper HOA permits. Each notice was more ridiculous than the last, and each carried a $75 fine. I sat at my kitchen table with my coffee, staring at $3,225 in fines for fishing in my own lake. My wife Jennifer found me there an hour later, still reading through the stack. "Marcus, maybe we should just move," she said quietly, rubbing my shoulders. "This isn't worth your health. You haven't slept properly in days." I looked at the photo of my father on the mantle, the one where he's holding up a bass at his favorite fishing spot back in California. He'd worked construction his whole life, saving every penny so I could go to college and have a better life. He'd never owned property like this, never had the chance to fish on his own land. "No," I said, standing up. "Dad didn't work double shifts for 30 years so I could run away from some HOA bully. We fight back." That afternoon, I drove to the county courthouse and pulled every public record I could find about Sunset Hills HOA. What I discovered made my software engineer brain start connecting dots in a very disturbing pattern. Linda Morrison had been HOA president for 5 years. In that time, the community had taken out 3 major loans totaling $4.7 million for infrastructure improvements and community development. But driving through Sunset Hills, I couldn't see $4.7 million worth of improvements anywhere. The roads were the same ones built 10 years ago. The community center was a basic building that couldn't have cost more than $200,000. The pool was nice but nothing special. Where had all that money gone? I also discovered something interesting about my ranch. According to the original county plat maps, my property had never been part of any development. The Lone Star Ranch had been deeded as agricultural land in 1887 and had remained so ever since. There was no legal way the HOA could claim jurisdiction over my lake. But here's where it got really interesting. I found building permits for something called Sunset Hills Lakefront Phase 2 filed just 6 months ago. The permits showed plans for 50 luxury lots arranged around a lake. My lake. Linda had filed permits to develop property she didn't own, around a lake that wasn't hers. That evening, I installed 8 high-definition security cameras around my property perimeter. If Linda wanted to escalate this fight, I was going to document every single thing she did. The cameras paid off faster than I expected. Around midnight, while I was reviewing HOA financial documents, my phone buzzed with a motion alert. The night vision showed a figure creeping along the lake's edge, carrying what looked like large containers. It was Tommy, Linda's assistant, and he was on his phone. The audio was crystal clear. "Yes, Mrs. Morrison, I'm doing it now. The algae bloom stimulator will make the lake look contaminated by morning. Then we can get the county to condemn it as an environmental hazard." I watched in shock as he dumped bucket after bucket of some kind of green solution into my pristine lake. He was so focused on his task that he didn't notice when something fell from his pocket, his HOA ID badge. After he left, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my porch watching my beautiful clear lake turn a sickly green in the moonlight. Right on schedule at 8 a.m., Linda arrived with someone she introduced as a county environmental inspector. The man looked about as official as a Halloween costume, complete with a clipboard he never actually wrote on. "Look at this contamination." Linda shouted loud enough for any passing neighbors to hear. "This lake is an environmental disaster. Toxic algae bloom caused by neglect." I let them perform their little show, Linda taking photos from every angle while her fake inspector made concerned noises. "You're finished, Chin," she said with a triumphant smile. "The county will shut this down and fine you into bankruptcy." I waited until she was done with her performance, then pulled out my phone. "Actually, Linda, the real county inspector is already on his way. I called him about an hour ago to report an environmental crime." The color drained from her face. "What?" 20 minutes later, an actual county vehicle pulled up, and a real inspector emerged with proper credentials and equipment. I showed him the security footage on my tablet. His face went from professional to furious in seconds. "Ma'am, are you aware that deliberately contaminating a water source is a federal crime?" Linda's face went white. That's fake. He edited that video. This is all a setup." The real inspector was already testing the water. "This is definitely artificial contamination. Non-toxic algae stimulator, but still a deliberate pollution event." He turned to Linda with a look that could freeze hell. "The HOA will be fined $15,000 for this violation, and I'll be recommending criminal charges for whoever dumped this." Tommy, who had been silent the whole time, was sweating through his polo shirt. Linda turned on him immediately. This was Tommy's idea. He acted without authorization. The inspector wasn't buying it. As he wrote up the fine, Linda's phone started ringing. She ignored it. It rang again. And again. I caught a glimpse of the screen, Regional Bank with 6 missed calls, then 10, then 15. Her hands were shaking as she rejected each call. After the inspector left with his water samples and Linda's $15,000 fine, Tommy lingered behind. He looked miserable, like a man wrestling with his conscience. "Mr. Chin," he said quietly, glancing around to make sure Linda was gone. "I can't do this anymore. She's going to destroy everything." He pulled out a flash drive from his pocket. "That development plan she mentioned? She's already taken deposits from investors for lots around your lake. 50 lots at $40,000 each. That's $2 million in deposits for a development that can't legally exist because she doesn't own your land." He pressed the drive into my hand. "She's been selling lots around your lake for a development that doesn't exist. And that's not even the worst part." "What's the worst part?" Tommy looked back at the green-tinted lake with disgust. "She's already spent most of the money. Those loans she took out? They weren't for community improvements. They were to cover the deposits from earlier investment schemes that fell through. She's been running a Ponzi scheme for 3 years, and your lake was supposed to be her way out." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I didn't sign up to be a criminal. Because she's gotten desperate since the bank started calling about that $3.2 million loan. And because..." He paused, seeming to age 10 years in front of me, "because my grandmother lives in this community, and Linda's about to destroy everything she's worked for." "What do you mean about the loan?" "There's a clause, if there's any major legal trouble, they can call in the whole amount immediately." "Don't say where you got this," he said, walking away quickly. That night I couldn't sleep. Jennifer found me at 3 a.m. sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop, going through Tommy's files for the 3rd time. "Marcus, you're shaking," she said, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. "This is bigger than we thought, isn't it?" I showed her the investor contracts. 50 families who'd paid $40,000 each for lakefront property that didn't exist. Some had emptied their retirement accounts. One couple had sold their house to invest. "These aren't just numbers," Jennifer whispered, tears in her eyes. These are people's lives she's destroyed. We sat there until sunrise, realizing we weren't just fighting for our lake anymore. We were fighting for every family Linda had scammed. The weight of that responsibility was crushing, but it also strengthened my resolve. Linda Morrison had to be stopped, and that flash drive was the weapon to do it. 15 missed calls from the bank. What does Linda owe them and why is she suddenly so desperate? Comment, busted, if you think her assistant is about to flip sides because that phone is about to ring again. That night I sat at my computer with Tommy's flash drive, Jennifer looking over my shoulder as we discovered just how deep Linda's scam went. The drive contained dozens of folders with names like investor_contracts, loan_documents, and bank_communications. My hand trembled slightly as I clicked on a file named regional_bank_final_agreement.pdf. The number at the top made us both gasp. $3.2 million borrowed against the HOA's assets for something called the Sunset Hills Lakefront Development Project. Jennifer grabbed my arm. Marcus, look at this map. She pointed to a development plan showing 50 luxury lots arranged around a lake. My lake. Linda had been selling property that didn't exist around a lake she didn't own. The promotional materials were professional, complete with 3D renderings and a video of Linda in a hard hat promising the most exclusive lakefront community in Texas Hill Country. But the real bombshell was in a folder labeled Loan Under Confidential. Section 12.7b of the loan agreement buried on page 43 of the contract made my blood run cold. In the event of significant legal disputes, failure to maintain infrastructure as specified, or any criminal investigations involving HOA board members, Regional Bank reserves the right to demand immediate repayment of all funds plus penalties up to 100% of the original loan amount. I read it 3 times to make sure I understood correctly. Jennifer, this means if Linda gets caught, the HOA owes up to $6.4 million immediately. The next morning, my 70-year-old neighbor Mrs. Patterson appeared at my door before I'd finished my coffee. Marcus, we need to talk but not here. Can we go inside? Once we were in my kitchen with the blinds drawn, her whole demeanor changed. I was the HOA treasurer for 12 years until Linda forced me out 2 years ago. I know things about her that could help you. She pulled out a manila folder from her purse. Be very careful. 4 years ago, the Williams family on Cedar Street had a beautiful pond on their property. Linda made their life hell with violations and fines until they couldn't take it anymore and sold. Let me guess, I said. Someone connected to Linda bought it? Mrs. Patterson nodded grimly. Her brother-in-law for half the market value. The pond is now part of the community green space, but HOA members have to pay extra fees to use it. She opened her folder and spread out financial documents. But that's not the worst part. Linda's been taking out loans in the HOA's name, big ones. Millions of dollars for community improvements that never happened. I studied the papers, my software background automatically flagging inconsistencies. Mrs. Patterson, according to these invoices, the HOA spent $800,000 on road repairs last year, but I drive these roads daily. That work couldn't have cost more than $100,000. Now you're getting it, she said bitterly. And guess whose company did the work? Morrison Construction, Linda's husband's company. My phone buzzed with a security alert. I opened the camera app and saw a figure at my gate. It was Linda and she looked desperate. She's here, I told Mrs. Patterson, who quickly gathered her papers and headed for the back door. Be careful, Marcus. Linda's not just corrupt, she's dangerous when cornered. I met Linda at my front gate, making sure to activate the recording function on my phone. Marcus, we need to talk. Alone. Against my better judgment, I stepped outside. What do you want, Linda? Let's be reasonable, she said, her voice honey-sweet but her eyes desperate. I know you have certain information. I'm prepared to make this worth your while. What kind of information? Don't play games with me. I'll approve any permits you want, a dock, a boathouse, hell, I'll zone your property commercial if you want to open a fishing resort. I kept my expression neutral. I don't want anything from you, Linda. Her facade cracked. Everyone wants something. Name your price. $50,000? $100,000? This doesn't have to get ugly. It's already ugly, I replied. You've been stealing from your neighbors for years. Linda's sweet tone vanished instantly. You have no idea who you're messing with. I've destroyed bigger fish than you. Ask the Williams family what happened when they crossed me. Ask the Johnsons why they moved in the middle of the night. She stepped closer, and I could smell wine on her breath despite it being morning. You have a nice wife, Marcus. Pretty woman. It would be a shame if her employer got anonymous reports about her husband's illegal activities. I stayed calm despite my anger. Are you threatening my wife? Linda smiled coldly. I'm explaining reality. Drop this crusade, or I'll make your life so miserable you'll beg to sell me that lake for pennies on the dollar. The threat started that very night. Our mailbox was smashed with a baseball bat. Jennifer's car tires were slashed while she was at work. Anonymous calls came at all hours, breathing, then hang-ups. But the worst was when Jennifer's boss called her into his office. Someone sent an anonymous complaint about you, she told me through tears. Said I was married to a criminal who was destroying the community. He didn't believe it, but he warned me there might be more complaints coming. I held her as she cried, my anger building to dangerous levels. Linda had crossed a line by targeting my wife. The next morning I found a dead fish on our doorstep with a note. This could be you. That's when I realized Linda wasn't just desperate, she was dangerous. I called Deputy Martinez and filed a report, adding it to our growing pile of evidence. She's escalating, he warned me. People like Linda, when they're cornered, they lash out. Be careful and maybe consider some personal protection. That afternoon I installed more cameras and bought a security system for the house. If Linda wanted war, I'd make sure every single crime was documented. Over the next few days, Linda tried to rally support against me. She held small meetings in homeowners' living rooms, spreading lies about how I was destroying property values and planning to turn the lake into a commercial fishery. About 30% of the community started giving me cold looks, and Jennifer received several nasty text messages from numbers we didn't recognize. But Linda had underestimated Tommy's conscience. We met at midnight in a 24-hour diner 2 towns over. He slid a key card and a piece of paper across the table. Master access to the HOA office and all the passwords, he said quietly. She's been deleting files all day, but she doesn't know I set up automatic cloud backups 3 months ago. Everything's preserved. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes. The bank called 30 times today. They know about the lawsuits, the environmental fine, and the fraud investigation you triggered. They're invoking the acceleration clause. What exactly did she use the $3.2 million for? I asked. Tommy laughed bitterly. That's the best part. The loan was supposed to buy the land around your lake and develop it. But your ranch was never for sale, so she used the money to pay off earlier debts and keep the Ponzi scheme going. She's been robbing Peter to pay Paul for 3 years, and your lake was supposed to be her final score to make it all work. He pulled out his phone and showed me a text from Linda. Emergency board meeting tomorrow. Transfer all HOA assets to Morrison Construction immediately. Tommy stood to leave. She's going to try to shield the assets before the bank can seize them. But it's too late. I already sent copies of everything to the State Attorney General's office. The next evening's emergency board meeting was Linda's last stand. She tried to ram through a resolution transferring all HOA assets to her husband's company for liability protection. But Tommy walked in just as the vote was about to happen. Before you vote, he said loudly, you should know that Mrs. Morrison has been selling lots around Mr. Chen's private lake to investors. He held up a stack of contracts. 50 investors paid $40,000 each for property that doesn't exist. That's wire fraud. The room went silent. Linda's face cycled through red, white, and green like a broken traffic light. Tommy, you're fired, she screamed. You signed an NDA. Tommy smiled sadly. Actually, Linda, whistleblower protections override NDAs when reporting criminal activity. I learned that from the FBI agent I spoke with yesterday. The next morning, Linda's phone finally rang with the call she'd been dreading. Regional Bank Special Assets Division had made their decision. The speakerphone in her home office crackled to life. Mrs. Morrison, due to pending litigation and evidence of loan fraud, you have 24 hours to repay the full amount, $3.2 million plus penalties. 24 hours to pay $3.2 million. But wait, where did all the HOA money actually go? Type busted if you smell something fishy here. The truth is about to explode in court. 3 months after that fateful morning when Linda called the cops on me, we finally had our day in court. The courtroom was packed with over 300 residents, 5 news crews, and enough tension to cut with a knife. Linda sat at the defendant's table in a black suit that couldn't hide how much weight she'd lost. Her usual perfect composure was gone, replaced by hands that shook as she shuffled papers. Tommy sat in the witness section, looking like a man who'd finally found peace with his choices. In the corner, a news broadcaster was ready to track the financial devastation in real time with a digital counter that started at $0. Judge Harrison, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, called the court to order. This began as a civil dispute but has revealed potential criminal activity spanning 5 years. We'll proceed with evidence presentation. Linda's lawyer, an expensive suit from Dallas, stood up with false confidence. Your Honor, my client has been a dedicated community leader who made some bookkeeping errors. This is a witch hunt led by a disgruntled neighbor who wants to destroy our harmonious community. My lawyer, a sharp young woman named Sarah Kim, smiled like a shark. Your Honor will show systematic fraud, embezzlement and theft totaling millions of dollars. This isn't about bookkeeping errors, it's about criminal enterprise. The first phase of evidence focused on the lake sabotage. Sarah played the security footage on the courtroom's large screen, showing Tommy dumping algae stimulator into my lake at midnight while talking to Linda on the phone. The audio was crystal clear. Yes, Mrs. Morrison, I'm doing it now. The algae bloom will make the lake look contaminated by morning. The money counter jumped to $15,000, the environmental fine. Gallery members gasped and whispered. Linda tried to maintain composure, but sweat beaded on her forehead. That's taken out of context, she blurted out, earning a sharp look from the judge. Mrs. Morrison, you'll have your chance to respond. Stay quiet. Tommy took the stand next and Linda's eyes shot daggers at him. I was Linda Morrison's assistant for 4 years, he began, his voice steady despite the pressure. She directed me to sabotage Mr. Chen's property because she was desperate. She'd already sold lots around that lake to investors. Tommy produced the original files Linda thought she'd deleted. She sold 50 lakefront lots for $40,000 each. The problem? She didn't own the lake or the land around it. When Mr. Chen bought his ranch, her whole scheme fell apart. The counter spun up to $2 million as Tommy laid out contract after contract. Investors in the gallery started shouting, "That's my retirement money." She told us construction would start this spring. Judge Harrison banged her gavel repeatedly to restore order. Linda's lawyer tried to object, but Tommy continued ruthlessly. She knew it was fraud. I have recordings of her saying, quote, "They'll never know until it's too late to matter." The judge called a brief recess and I watched Linda during those 10 minutes. She sat alone at the defendant's table, abandoned even by her expensive lawyer who stepped outside for a phone call. Her hands trembled as she poured water, spilling half of it. For a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered the 50 families she'd defrauded, Mrs. Patterson being forced out for asking questions, and my wife crying because of anonymous threats. No. Linda had brought this on herself. Phase 2 brought the fake invoices to light. Sarah presented side-by-side comparisons on the screen. Road repairs billed to HOA, $800,000. Actual cost, $150,000. Pool renovation billed, $500,000. Actual cost, $75,000. Landscaping billed, $400,000. Actual cost, $50,000. With each revelation the counter spun higher, $1.5 million in false billing. Linda's husband, sitting in the gallery, slumped lower in his seat as his company's involvement was exposed. Every inflated contract went to Morrison Construction. Sarah continued, owned by David Morrison, Linda Morrison's husband. The money went straight from HOA accounts to their personal accounts. Mrs. Patterson took the stand next, dignified despite her age. I was treasurer when I discovered the discrepancies. When I tried to alert homeowners, Linda held an emergency meeting and had me removed. She produced her original reports, stamped but never filed. I documented over $2.5 million in questionable transactions before she forced me out. She told me, "Some things are better left unexamined, Margaret. For your own good." The counter hit $3.8 million and the courtroom was in chaos. Judge Harrison was about to call another recess when a man in an expensive suit stood up in the gallery. Your Honor, I'm Richard Stone from Regional Bank Special Assets Division. May I address the court? The judge nodded and everyone held their breath. Stone approached the bench with a sealed envelope. Regional Bank has been monitoring this situation closely. We extended a $3.2 million loan to Sunset Hills HOA for infrastructure development. He opened the envelope with theatrical precision. Per Section 12.7b of our agreement, the loan becomes immediately due if there's significant legal trouble or infrastructure failure. Our inspection yesterday revealed roads that haven't been properly maintained, a pool that's been closed for 8 months, and landscaping that's dead or dying. Linda stood up suddenly. That's not true. We maintained everything perfectly. The judge glared at her. Mrs. Morrison, sit down or I'll hold you in contempt. Stone continued reading from the bank's decision. Due to multiple lawsuits, evidence of fraud and failure to maintain infrastructure as specified in our agreement, Regional Bank demands immediate repayment. The courtroom went silent. Even the news crew stopped whispering. Original loan amount, $3.2 million. Accrued interest, $480,000. Early payment penalty per contract, $640,000. Required infrastructure remediation, $800,000. The counter exploded upward, numbers spinning so fast they blurred. When it stopped, it showed $5.12 million. Linda's legs gave out. That's impossible, she screamed, gripping the table. I built this community. I made it beautiful. You people wanted more, better amenities, higher property values. I did what I had to do. In her emotional breakdown, Linda began confessing without realizing it. Do you know how hard it is to keep everyone happy? They wanted new everything but wouldn't pay assessments. So yes, I got creative with the books. Yes, I took some money, I deserved it for all my work. That lake was supposed to fix everything. 50 lots at $400,000 each after development, $20 million in revenue. We'd have been set. Her lawyer tried desperately to silence her, but Linda was beyond control. I've given 8 years of my life to this place. My marriage is falling apart. I haven't slept in months. And this is the thanks I get. She swayed on her feet, eyes rolling back. I need. Then she collapsed, hitting the floor with a thud that echoed through the silent courtroom. Someone call 911. Tommy shouted, jumping from his seat. Paramedics rushed in while the judge called a recess. As they worked on Linda, Tommy approached the bench. Your Honor, there's one more thing. He handed over a USB drive. Audio recordings of Mrs. Morrison threatening residents who opposed her, including Mr. Chen's wife. As paramedics loaded Linda onto a stretcher, the judge made her preliminary ruling. This court finds sufficient evidence of fraud, embezzlement and criminal conspiracy. I'm recommending immediate criminal charges to the district attorney. All HOA operations are frozen effective immediately. A forensic audit will begin Monday. She looked at the packed courtroom. For the residents of Sunset Hills, I'm appointing a temporary administrator to oversee dissolution of the HOA and return of any recoverable funds. The courtroom erupted in mixed emotions: relief, anger, shock. Some residents cried, realizing their community fees had been stolen for years. Others cheered, finally free from Linda's tyranny. The money counter on the news broadcast kept flashing the final number, $5.12 million. As they wheeled Linda out on the stretcher, she was mumbling incoherently about lakes and loans and landscaping. Her perfect kingdom had crumbled in exactly 3 hours and 47 minutes. Linda just collapsed. But why is Tommy smiling? And what's on that USB drive he just handed the judge? Comment your guess for Linda's jail time. The final twist has something nobody saw coming. 6 months after Linda Morrison's dramatic courtroom collapse, I sat by my lake with a fishing rod in one hand and my phone in the other, recording an update video for the millions of people who'd been following this saga. The lake sparkled in the morning sun, clear and peaceful, with no trace of the algae stimulator Tommy had dumped that night so long ago. So many of you have asked for updates. I began adjusting the camera angle. Let me tell you where everyone ended up after the HOA's $5.12 million mistake. The video would eventually get 23 million views, but in that moment, I was just a guy with a fishtail nobody would have believed a year ago. Linda Morrison's fall from grace was complete and brutal. Her mugshot, where she looked haggard and defeated in orange instead of her usual power suits, became an internet meme overnight. From HOA Queen to prisoner number 47291, the headline screamed. She was convicted on multiple federal charges: wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and racketeering. The judge sentenced her to 8 to 12 years in federal prison, noting that her systematic abuse of trust and exploitation of vulnerable investors warrants the maximum penalty. Linda was also ordered to pay restitution of $4.2 million, though everyone knew she'd never have that kind of money again. Her real estate license was permanently revoked, and she was banned from ever serving on any homeowner association board again. The woman who once controlled every blade of grass in Sunset Hills now controlled nothing but her small prison cell. The divorce papers were filed before Linda even got to federal prison. David Morrison claimed complete ignorance of his wife's schemes, though nobody in Sunset Hills believed him. Morrison Construction had received over $1.7 million in inflated contracts, and forensic accountants found matching deposits in their joint accounts. The divorce got ugly fast, with both parties fighting over what few assets remained untouched by asset forfeiture. Their custom-built house, the crown jewel of Sunset Hills, went into foreclosure within 4 months. The bank sold it for 60% of its assessed value to a young family who had no idea about its history. Linda's carefully curated life of luxury was reduced to a prison jumpsuit and a cafeteria tray. Tommy Torres became the unlikely hero of the story. His cooperation with prosecutors earned him an immunity deal, and his testimony was crucial in securing Linda's conviction. The district attorney's office was so impressed with his attention to detail and moral courage that they offered him a job as a fraud investigator. "I sleep better now," he told me during our last conversation. For 4 years I watched her destroy people's lives and told myself I was just following orders. Never again. He specialized in HOA fraud cases, helping uncover similar schemes in neighboring communities. Within a year he'd helped prosecute 7 other corrupt HOA boards, earning a commendation from the state attorney general. The HOA dissolution vote was unanimous. Not a single resident wanted to keep the organization that had stolen millions from them. For the first time in 8 years, Sunset Hills was free from Linda's iron grip. No more $400 monthly fees. No more ridiculous regulations about mailbox colors or grass height. No more fear of violation notices for imaginary infractions. Property values, which Linda always claimed would plummet without her strict control, actually increased by 22% within 6 months. Turns out buyers preferred freedom over fascism. The community managed itself just fine with basic city ordinances and neighborly cooperation. Crime didn't increase. Properties weren't neglected. People just lived their lives without someone breathing down their necks about lawn care. The 50 investors who'd bought into Linda's fake lakefront development were partially refunded from the seized assets, though it took months of legal wrangling. Most recovered about 60 cents on the dollar after legal fees. Some of them approached me about legitimately purchasing land near the lake, and I worked out fair deals with 8 families who understood and respected property boundaries. Unlike Linda's phantom development, this was real, legal, and beneficial to everyone involved. The new neighbors became fishing buddies, and we established an informal lake association based on mutual respect rather than fabricated regulations. Mrs. Patterson, vindicated after years of suspicion, became something of a local celebrity. She helped other HOAs audit their books and found similar fraud in 5 nearby communities. Linda wasn't unique, she told a news crew. She was just the most brazen. HOAs attract people who want power over others, and without proper oversight, that power corrupts. Regional Bank ate a $2.1 million loss after all assets were liquidated. They changed their lending policies for HOAs, requiring quarterly audits and multiple signatures for any loans over $50,000. The CEO personally visited Sunset Hills to apologize to residents, though most blamed Linda, not the bank. The empty HOA office building was converted into a community center where kids learned to fish in the same spot where Linda used to scheme about stealing my lake. My own life returned to the peace I'd sought when buying the ranch. The lake was mine, free and clear, with no HOA trying to regulate my fishing rod length or the number of casts I could make. I built a small public dock where neighbors could fish on weekends, hosting monthly fish fries that brought the community together in ways Linda's iron rule never could. My software consulting business actually grew from the publicity. Turns out people wanted to hire someone who stood up to corruption. But the biggest change was my social media presence. The video documenting this whole saga went viral, leading to a YouTube channel with 4.2 million subscribers and counting. Who knew people loved HOA justice stories so much? The national impact exceeded anything I could have imagined. Our story was featured on major news programs, sparking investigations into HOA practices nationwide. 5 states passed Linda's law, requiring financial transparency and regular audits for all homeowner associations. The FBI created a dedicated HOA fraud task force after discovering similar schemes in dozens of communities. HOA reform became a hot political topic, with candidates promising to protect homeowners from authoritarian boards. In the year following Linda's conviction, 73 HOAs dissolved themselves rather than face scrutiny, and 19 HOA presidents were arrested for various forms of fraud. I still fish that lake every morning, watching the sunrise paint the water gold while bass jump for early morning flies. Sometimes I think about that morning when Linda called the cops on me, how a simple fishing trip exposed millions in fraud and freed an entire community from tyranny. The most expensive 911 call in HOA history, all because Linda couldn't leave well enough alone. You know what's funny? I said to my camera, reeling in a decent-sized base. Linda was right about one thing: this lake did increase property values. Just not the way she planned. I held up the fish for the camera, grinning at the irony. If she'd just let me fish in peace, she'd still be stealing millions and ruling her little kingdom. But greed makes people stupid, and one phone call to the cops brought her whole house of cards crashing down. The comment section of that video became a support group for HOA victims worldwide. "My HOA tried the same thing, fighting back now," wrote someone from Phoenix. "Linda reminds me of our board president forwarding this to our lawyer," said another from Miami. "Thanks to your video, our HOA dissolved last month," celebrated a viewer from Seattle. The ripple effect was incredible. One man fishing in his own lake had triggered an avalanche of justice across America. In the 6 months since posting the video, I've received over 5,000 emails from people fighting their own HOA battles. We created an informal network sharing legal strategies and emotional support. Linda had unknowingly united her victims into a force for change. The national statistics were staggering. In the year following our story, 73 HOAs voluntarily dissolved rather than face audits. 19 HOA presidents besides Linda were arrested for fraud, embezzlement, or abuse of power. The FBI's new HOA fraud task force recovered over $67 million in stolen funds nationwide. 7 states passed comprehensive HOA reform laws. Federal lawmakers began drafting a National HOA Transparency Act, nicknamed the Morrison Bill, after our infamous president. Legal experts called it the biggest shift in HOA law in 40 years. All because one person called the cops on a fisherman. My advice to anyone dealing with HOA harassment is simple but crucial. Document everything. Every interaction, every threat, every suspicious fee. Install security cameras. They're worth their weight in gold when you need evidence. Know your property rights down to the inch, because HOAs count on owner ignorance. Check those financial reports religiously and ask questions when numbers don't add up. Most importantly, don't be intimidated by threats or peer pressure. Linda ruled through fear for 8 years because people were too scared to challenge her. And always record your interactions. You never know when someone might confess to crimes while trying to intimidate you. The security camera system that caught Tommy contaminating my lake cost $3,000. Some people called it paranoid, but that footage was pivotal in exposing Linda's schemes. Now I consult on property protection, though I keep it simple. No expensive courses or miracle solutions. The basics work: good cameras, clear boundaries, documented ownership, and the courage to stand your ground. My dad used to say, "Patience catches fish." He was right about more than fishing. We waited, gathered evidence, and struck when the time was right. Linda thought she was the predator, but she ended up being the biggest catch of all. What started as a morning fishing trip has become my full-time mission. I still live at the ranch, still fish every morning, but now I also help others fight HOA corruption. The YouTube channel expanded beyond our story to feature other victories against tyrannical boards. We've exposed fake special assessments, rigged elections, and embezzlement schemes from coast to coast. Every video ends with the same message: you have rights and you can fight back. The software consulting business runs itself now while I focus on what Dad would have called the good fight. He saved his whole life so I could have that peaceful lake, and now I use it to help others find their own peace. Today marks the 1-year anniversary of Linda's 911 call, and the community threw a party at the lake. Former HOA board members who'd been Linda's puppets came to apologize, admitting they'd been manipulated and intimidated into compliance. We grilled fish, shared stories, and celebrated freedom from tyranny. Even Tommy showed up, bringing his grandmother who'd lived in fear of Linda for years. "This is what a real community looks like," she said, tears in her eyes. "No forced assessments, no arbitrary rules, just neighbors choosing to come together." The sign at the entrance no longer reads, "Sunset Hills HOA property." Now it simply says, "Welcome to the neighborhood, no HOA zone." Someone added a small plaque underneath, "Site of the $5.12 million fishing trip." Subscribe if you believe in justice. Comment your HOA horror story below. And remember, sometimes the biggest catches are hiding in plain sight, wearing power suits and carrying clipboards. Thanks for watching. Now if you'll excuse me, the fish are biting and I've got a lake to enjoy.